mother-in-law was standing in my childhood bedroom, holding a folder, smiling at me like she was doing me a favor. My dad had been dead for 11 days. I want you to understand what those 11 days looked like. I had barely slept. I was surviving on gas station coffee and the casseroles neighbors kept leaving on the porch. My mom hadn't left the house once. She'd sit in my dad's armchair, his specific armchair, the one with the worn left armrest from 40 years of him resting his elbow there. And she'd just stare at the wall. Not crying, just starey. I didn't know which was worse. And there was my mother-in-law in my childhood bedroom smiling, holding a folder. My name is Laurel. I'm 31 years old. I work as a dental hygienist, part-time, because that's what made sense when my husband and I moved into my parents' house 3 years ago. My husband, I'll call him my husband until I don't have to anymore, had just lost his second job in 2 years. His idea, moving in with my parents, he framed it as temporary. Just until I get back on my feet. My parents said yes because they're kind people. My dad especially. He never once made my husband feel like a burden, even when he absolutely was one. My mom is 63. She'd been having some memory issues for about a year before my dad passed. Nothing diagnosed, nothing official. She'd forget where she put her keys. She'd repeat a question she'd already asked 20 minutes earlier. Once she called me by my aunt's name 3 times in the same conversation. My dad brushed it off. She's always been scattered, he'd say. But I noticed the way she'd go quiet when she got confused, like she was embarrassed. I noticed how she'd check my face to see if I caught it. My dad had a massive stroke in February. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, my husband's contribution to our household was essentially zero. He'd say he was looking for work, but he'd be on his gaming set up until 2 in the morning. I was driving to the hospital every day after my shifts, managing my mom's medications, handling the insurance calls, the forms, all of it. When I mentioned to my husband that I needed help, he said, "I don't know what you want from me. He's not my dad." He actually said that. My dad came home for exactly 9 days before he had a second stroke. This one he didn't survive. The funeral was small. My mom held it together in a way that broke my heart. She greeted every guest by name. She thanked people for coming. She made sure the sandwiches got put out at the right time. Then we got home and she sat in his armchair, and that was it. She didn't move for 4 hours. In the days after, my husband was around more than usual, which I noticed but didn't think much about. I was too tired to think much about anything. He made a few phone calls in the backyard. He was on his laptop a lot. I assumed he was job hunting. I was touched, honestly. I thought maybe something had shifted in him. I was wrong about that. 11 days after my dad died, my mom and I were in the spare room going through some of his things. Not all of them. I wasn't ready for all of them, just the papers. There were bills that needed to be handled, a filing cabinet full of folders going back 20 years. My mom would pick something up, look at it, and I'd either set it aside to deal with or I'd hold her hand for a minute. That's what we were doing. My husband came in with his mother behind him. She lives 40 minutes away. No one had called her. No one had invited her. She walked in behind my husband like she'd been here 100 times, even though she'd maybe been inside this house twice in 3 years. "We need to talk to you both," my husband said. My mom looked up from a folder of old tax returns. I looked at my husband. Something in his expression, the way he wasn't quite meeting my eyes, made my stomach drop before a single word was said. His mother was the one who spoke first. She said that the house was a lot for 2 women to manage on their own. She said that property taxes were going up in this area, and had we thought about what that would mean long term. She said that my husband had been doing a lot of thinking and he'd come up with a solution that was really best for everyone. I said, "What solution?" My husband pulled a document out of the folder his mother was holding. It was a property transfer agreement. It had my mother's signature on it. I read it 3 times. It transferred the house, my parents' house, the house my dad built an addition onto with his own hands when I was 9, the house my mom had lived in for 31 years, into my husband's name. There was a clause that said my mom could remain as a resident at his discretion. There was another clause that said I had no claim to the property. It was signed and dated 4 days ago. 4 days ago, my dad had been dead for a week. My mom had barely been out of that armchair. I looked at my mom. She was looking at the paper with an expression I couldn't read. "Mom," I said, "did you sign this?" She looked up at me and then back at the paper. I don't remember signing something like that, she said quietly. She signed it, my husband said. She was completely fine. Ask her. She just said she doesn't remember. She forgets things all the time, Laurel. You said that yourself. I felt something move through me that I don't have a good word for. It was cold and it went all the way through. His mother chimed back in. She said that given my mom's condition, she used the word condition like it was already official, like there'd been a diagnosis, like she knew anything about my mother. It made more sense for a capable adult to be handling the property. She said my husband was stepping up. She said I should be grateful. Grateful. I said the document was invalid. I said my mother clearly hadn't signed it with full understanding of what it was. I said they needed to leave. My husband looked at me with this expression, patient, almost pitying, like I was being hysterical, and he was very calmly dealing with it. The signature is real, he said. That's all that matters legally. That's not even close to how the law works, I said. You're not a lawyer. Neither are you. His mother said that if we weren't out within 30 days, she'd look into her options. She actually said that. Her options. In my mother's house. I'm going to tell you what happened next, and I need you to understand that I am not proud of how calm I was. I should have said more. I should have screamed. Instead, I just stood there in the doorway of the spare room holding a folder of my dad's old tax returns while my husband and his mother walked back down the hallway like they owned the place. Because in their minds, they did. That night, after they left, my mom and I sat at the kitchen table. I was fully prepared to have to comfort her, to explain what had happened, to hold her hand through it. Instead, she made us both tea and sat down and said, "That document won't hold up." I stared at her. A signature obtained under those circumstances from someone with documented cognitive concerns, with no independent witness, no attorney present, that's not a valid transfer. She wrapped her hands around her mug. Your father was an estate attorney for 22 years, sweetheart. Did you think he didn't make arrangements? I didn't know what to say. I may forget where I put my glasses, she said. I don't forget what your father told me. I called out of work for 2 days. Not because I was falling apart, because I had things to do. My dad's actual estate documents were with a firm downtown, a colleague of his, someone who had known our family for 15 years. I called her the next morning. She pulled up my dad's file. The house had been placed in a living trust 2 years ago. My mom was the sole trustee. The transfer document my husband had gotten her to sign was, legally speaking, worth about as much as a napkin. But I didn't tell my husband that yet. He texted me that week like nothing unusual had happened, like we were still fine. He asked what I wanted for dinner. He complained about a television show. He mentioned, casually, that he was thinking about renovating the garage of my parents' house. That he had apparently already decided was his. I let him think that. I started making calls. I called my work and explained the situation and asked about picking up more hours. They said yes. I called my cousin, who had a rental unit open in her building across town. I went and looked at it on a Tuesday afternoon without telling anyone. It was small, 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, no parking. But it had big windows, and it was clean, and the thought of living there with my mom made me feel something I hadn't felt in weeks, which was something like relief. I told my mom. She said, I've been ready. I've been waiting for you. We started quietly moving things, not everything at once, a box here, a bag there, things we brought to my cousin's unit on afternoons when my husband was out. The things that mattered. My dad's reading glasses, a quilt my grandmother made, the wooden jewelry box from my mom's dresser, his coffee mug, the specific one, the blue one with the chip in the handle that he refused to throw away for 15 years, the leather work gloves he'd worn doing every project in this house, those I wrapped in a dish towel and put in my car first. 3 weeks after my husband produced that document, on a Sunday morning, I put the last of our essentials in my car and my mom got in the passenger seat and we drove away. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing to say. The drive to my cousin's building took 20 minutes. My mom looked out the window the whole way. When we pulled up and I turned off the engine, she turned to me and said, "This is going to be good." I didn't entirely believe her, but I did not believe her either. The first few weeks were hard in practical ways. Tight budget, tight space, a new routine we were both still figuring out. My mom needed reminders sometimes, medications, appointments. But she was sharper than she'd been in months. I think the routine helped. I think the routine helped. I think being somewhere where she felt safe helped. She started going on morning walks. She started talking to the woman in the unit next door who turned out to be recently widowed, and the two of them started having coffee together on Wednesday mornings. I picked up 2 more patient days of the practice. My manager, who knew everything that had happened because I told her in the parking lot one afternoon while crying into a paper coffee cup, told me she wanted to add me to the full-time staff when a position opened up. She said she'd been meaning to offer it for a while. I said I'd take it. My husband texted me 14 times in the first month. The messages went through a few phases. First, there was confusion. Where are you? Why aren't you here? Then there was anger. You can't just leave. This isn't okay. I have rights here. Then there was something that sounded almost like remorse, which I didn't trust. Then, finally, something new. Can you come get the rest of your things? My mother is moving in. His mother was moving in. His mother was moving in. To my parents' house. Into the room where my dad used to keep his books. I went on a Tuesday when I knew he'd be there because I didn't want to be alone in that house. I pulled up and sat in my car for a minute before I went in. The front garden my mom had kept for 20 years was already overgrown. The welcome mat was gone. Someone had put a plastic outdoor chair in the middle of the front porch for no apparent reason. Inside was worse. The living room had been rearranged in a way that felt aggressively indifferent to the life that had been lived there. The furniture my parents had picked out together had been pushed to the walls or removed entirely. There were moving boxes stacked in the hallway. It smelled like fast food. My husband came out of the kitchen. He looked tired. He looked like someone who had made several decisions and was beginning to understand what they'd cost him. You took a lot already, he said. I took what's mine and my mother's. She should be in a facility, he said. I've said that from the beginning. It would be better for everyone. I looked at him. I thought about all the years I'd rearranged my life around his failures. All the times I'd quietly compensated for what he didn't do. All the times I'd told myself it would get better. Better for who? I said. He didn't answer. I took the 2 boxes that had my name on them and I left. At the door, I stopped and looked back at the house. The walls, the light through the front window, the spot at the top of the stairs where the carpet was worn from years of people walking over it, and I let myself feel it for a second. Then I got in my car. I cried for about 10 minutes on the way home. Then I stopped. 2 months later, I got a call from the attorney handling my dad's estate. She wanted to let me know she'd sent a formal letter to my husband's mother regarding the fraudulent transfer document. She also mentioned, gently, that the house was legally untouchable, that even if they stayed, which they were apparently insisting on for now, there were processes in motion that would clarify the situation. She said my mom had actually called her directly the week before to discuss options. She said my mom had been remarkably clear. I called my mom after I hung up. She was at her Wednesday coffee. She called me back an hour later. Did the attorney reach you? She asked. She did, I said. Good. I told her you'd been handling enough. I didn't know what to say to that either. I'm finding that's a pattern with my mom. She does something that leaves me without words, and then she just moves on, like it's nothing. Like, of course she did that. The thing about my dad's work clothes is this. I'd taken them without really knowing why. They'd been hanging by the back door for so long they were basically part of the house. But the morning after everything fell apart, the first morning I woke up in the new apartment, I took them out of the dish towel and just held them. They still smelled like his workshop, like sawdust and something metallic. I put them on the windowsill. They've been there since. I'm not going to tell you I'm fine, because I'm still in it. The divorce isn't final. The house situation is still being sorted out legally. My mom has good weeks and harder weeks, and I'm learning to tell the difference. The full-time position at the practice starts next month. But I'll tell you what I know right now. I wake up in the morning and I hear my mom in the kitchen. I can hear her talking to herself the way she always has. A quiet running commentary on whatever she's doing, something she's done as long as I can remember. And I think, this is what matters. Not the house. Not any of it. My husband texted me last week. He said he'd been doing some thinking. He said he realized he'd made some mistakes. He said if I came back, he'd be willing to start fresh. I looked at the text for about 30 seconds. Then I put my phone face down on the counter and went to make breakfast. My mom made the coffee. She makes it too strong, but I've stopped saying anything about it. Some things you just let go. You figure out what's worth holding on to, and you hold on to that, and you let everything else find its own way out the door. My dad knew that. He knew it before I did. I'm starting to learn. I've thought a lot about the version of me that stood in that spare room holding my dad's tax returns while my husband explained, calmly, that my mother's house now belonged to him. I've thought about why I didn't scream. Why I didn't throw something. I think I was waiting for him to realize what he was doing. I kept expecting some flicker of recognition, that this was wrong, that he knew it was wrong, that somewhere underneath all of it was the person I'd believed I married. That flicker never came. And that told me everything I needed to know, not just about him, but about how long I'd been looking for something that wasn't there. Here's what I've come to understand about the way things played out. People who operate the way my husband and his mother did, who look at grief and see an opening, who look at a woman caring for her aging mother and see a vulnerability to exploit. They don't fail because someone defeats them. They fail because of the weight of their own choices. They moved into that house and within weeks it was filthy and falling apart and the neighbors hated them and the family they'd counted on wanted nothing to do with them. No one did that to them. They did it to themselves. That's not luck. That's just the math of how people like that live. My dad spent his career in estate law because he believed in order. He believed that the right structures, put in place with care, protect the people you love after you're gone. He didn't build that trust document because he was cynical. He built it because he was paying attention. He saw that the world contains people who will try to take what isn't theirs, and he made sure the people he loved were covered. That's not pessimism. That's wisdom. And the thing about wisdom is that it keeps working even after the person who had it is gone. My dad protected my mom from beyond his own death through paperwork, through foresight, through decades of knowing exactly what mattered. I find that extraordinary. I find it more comforting than I know how to say. My mom, I've learned, is not who I thought she was. And I mean that as a complete compliment. I spent a year quietly, anxiously watching her forget things and worrying about what was coming. I treated her, without meaning to, like someone who needed to be protected from reality. And then reality arrived, hard and fast. And she sat down at the kitchen table and told me, with complete clarity, that the document wouldn't hold up. She'd been carrying information I didn't know she had. She'd been watching. She'd been thinking. She just hadn't told me because she didn't want me to worry more than I already was. That's not cognitive decline. That's a mother. Resilience isn't a personality trait. I used to think it was something certain people were born with and others weren't. I don't believe that anymore. I think it's a decision you make in small increments. The decision to pick up more hours instead of falling apart, to look at a small apartment with big windows and let yourself feel relieved instead of diminished, to wrap your dad's work gloves in a dish towel and put them in the car first because you know they matter even if you can't explain why yet. None of those are dramatic moments. They don't feel like strength when you're doing them. But they add up. My dad's gloves are still on the windowsill. I look at them most mornings. I don't have a ritual about it. I'm not that kind of person. But I look at them and I think about a man who built things with his hands and also built things with his mind and who loved the people in his life with enough foresight to keep protecting them after he was gone. I want to be that kind of person. I'm not there yet, but I'm learning what it looks like. That's enough to go on.